And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday, April 7th. We have a lot to cover on the show today, like we always do. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining. Between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers, we appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So, let's get into what we are going to discuss for today. So, we are going to recap the two Final Four games on Saturday, and we will take a look at the game tonight for the national championship between the Florida Gators and the Houston Cougars. So we will get into that in just a second, and we will talk about, like I said, the craziness on Saturday with the two Final Four games, especially the second game. Then we will get into talking about the NBA, updates on the NBA standings. We'll also talk about Jalen Brunson coming back yesterday after being out for a little bit with the ankle injury. So the Knicks did pick up the win last night against the Suns, and they're basically locked into the third seed in the Eastern Conference. But we'll talk about the standings as a whole, where everything currently is at, what could possibly change as we near the end of the regular season in the NBA. So we'll get into all that. So originally, now in the third part of the show, I was going to talk about what Rob Manfred was saying about the torpedo bats, but we did get some news late last night as I was getting ready to go to bed. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. of the Blue Jays signed a contract extension for 14 years. I think $500 million is the contract. So he's staying with the Toronto Blue Jays long term because this was his contract year. He was going to leave if he hit free agency, but that did not happen. It shows that, he wanted to stay, and of course the Blue Jays wanted to keep him, and they were able to get a deal done. So we'll get into that midway through the show. We'll also talk about Julio Jones. Julio Jones, the great wide receiver, a longtime Atlanta Falcon, announced his retirement over the weekend. So we'll get into talking about that. And then in the final part of the show, second to last season overviews. We are going to talk about the LA Chargers, how their season went, what they've done in free agency, and what have you. So I meant to say the Denver Broncos. My mistake. Denver Broncos we're talking about today. We did the Chargers already. I know, because I'm sitting there going, wait, I talked about the Chargers losing in the playoffs to the Texans. I remember doing that. Yeah, we're talking about the Broncos, not the Chargers. Denver Broncos, final part of the show. So let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the games from over the weekend in college basketball, as well as talking about the game tonight. And I'll give you my pick between the Houston Cougars and the Florida Gators. So Anthony already in the chat. What happened to Duke against Houston? Did Houston play them? Or did Duke just not show up? Well, here's the thing. Duke did show up. Duke did show up for 32 minutes. Not even 32 minutes. They showed up for 39 minutes. They showed up for basically the entire game up until the final minute, where they just collapsed. But before we get into that, I do want to get into the other game. I want to get into the other game first. The Gators and the Tigers. So Auburn was, they were up by 9. And then similar to what happened with, Texas Tech being up against Florida, Florida got themselves back in the game. And Walter Clayton Jr., unbelievable game, 34 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. He was the leading scorer for the Gators. And yeah, it's just Auburn, they really didn't have an answer. They were trailing, and once Florida took the lead late in the second half, and they weren't able to get it back. And Janai Broome, he finished with 15 points on the day. Chad Baker-Mazara, he finished with 18. Pettifer did not have a good day. 1 for 6 from the field, 0 for 4 from 3. But yeah, Auburn did come up short there. But this just shows you how explosive Florida's offense is. Again, I haven't been an avid watcher of college basketball, but from watching some of these games in the tournament, this is why people have them winning the whole thing. Their three-point shooting is very good. And, even if they're down big in some games, well, not, too big of a deficit, but, just enough where you're able to shoot yourself back into the game. That's what they did. That's what they did in this game, once again. And now they're moving on to the national championship game. For Auburn, they had a great run. I had them getting knocked out very early in my bracket, but that did not happen. They were very good in the tournament, but Florida was the better team. Florida, beat them in the regular season, and now they beat them in the postseason as well. Auburn couldn't get the redemption there, and I thought they were going to be able to hold on, but again, Florida, they've dealt with adversity in this tournament, and they were able to come back and win. So they've moved on, but let's get back to this Duke-Houston game. So Duke was up for the majority of this game. Like I said, they were up 6 in the final minute and 14 seconds of the game. They outscored Houston in the first half, 34-28, but then Houston outscored them 42-33 in the second half. So Houston does hit a three. So let's go to the final, minute of this game, right? So Duke is up 7, right? Cooper Flagg makes a free throw, his second free throw. He was fouled. So they were up 66-59. Houston is then fouled on their possession. They hit a couple of free throws. They're now down 5. Knipple hits 1 of 1. He gets fouled. So, yeah, they're up 6. And then Houston, Duke lets them hit a three-pointer. They're down 3. Houston calls a timeout. All right? So now Duke has to inbound. And then this changed the course of the game. Because then Duke inbounds and they turn the ball over. Houston's able to get the offensive rebound on the missed three-pointer. They get the dunk. And they're now down 1. So then on the ensuing possession, on Duke's possession, Tyrese Proctor is fouled. And we have seen this time and time again in some of these games. You got to make your free throws. You have to make your free throws in these type of games. And Tyrese Proctor, 1-on-1, misses the free throw. Houston gets the rebound. Cooper Flagg fouls Juwan Roberts. Now, that was kind of a ticky-tacky call, but that led to free throws. And Houston took the lead. They get the ball in their best player's hands, in Cooper Flagg, and he misses it. Probably didn't have to take the shot there. You still had time, but, you expect Cooper Flagg to make that shot. And he missed it. Houston gets the rebound. They shoot a couple more free throws. Tyrese Proctor heaves up a three-pointer, which was not even close, and they end up losing. But give Houston a lot of credit because, it's not like Duke was destroying them like, they did with Alabama. Houston was still kind of hanging around, but you figured Duke was going to be able to close it out. And that didn't happen. LJ Cryer, great game. 26 points. Emmanuel Sharp had 16. Look, Duke's best players did show up. Cooper Flagg had 27 points, and Knipple had 16. However, everybody's talking about the center. Duke's center had 0 rebounds in the game. It's not good. And you look at the rebounds comparison. Houston out-rebounded them 42-31. That's not good. And look, if Duke was able to Tyrese Proctor makes his free throws, maybe we're having a different conversation, but that game should have been won. They were up 6 with 30 seconds left. How do you lose that? But that's what happened. And John Shire and the Duke players, they owned up to it. The way they were playing, it looked like they were going to win the whole thing. But, they asked Knipple and Flagg. They said, it was about the defense of Houston or you guys, missing your shots. And, they kind of said it was, a little bit of both. I mean, yeah, I mean, you missed your free throws towards the end of the game. But Houston is a very good defensive team. And, they kept it within distance that it was like, hey, we can come back. And that's what happened. They benefited from Duke's mistakes, especially the turnover. The turnover towards the end there was massive. That and the missed free throw. So, yeah, now it sets up Houston against Florida. You got a very good offensive team against a very good defensive team. Who wins? Now, my bracket is completely destroyed now. I was doing well, and then the Final Four happens, and we're done. We have no chance of doing anything. Actually, my bracket that was where I was in dead last, because I had Houston winning in that one, I now jumped up to 10th. Now, I'm not going to win anything, but hey, at least I have a chance to, maybe move up even more. But, yeah, so it should be a good game. I honestly am leaning Florida. I'm leaning Florida in this game tonight. So when you hear that, you're like, all right, well, it looks like Houston's going to win. Because, I picked Auburn, and obviously I had Duke winning the entire thing. But I don't know. I'm leaning towards Florida. They have dealt with it, like I said earlier, they have dealt with adversity in this tournament. I mean, they've been down in these big games as we've gotten later into the tournament. And, they are able to shoot themselves back in the game. Houston won because of Duke making mistakes. Now, that does not mean that Houston can't win this game. They can. But are they going to be able to keep up with Florida? Are they going to be able to keep this game within striking distance in case they are down again to try and come back? We'll have to wait and see. But hopefully it's a great game tonight. But I am leaning towards the Gators to win this and win the national championship game. So you know what's going to happen. Houston's probably going to end up winning because of me saying that. Now, I know I have Houston winning in one of my brackets. I also do have Florida winning in another. But I am leaning towards Florida to win tonight. Like I said, I hope it's a good game. I hope it's exciting. But we did get two very good Final Four games. And I also did want to shout out the UConn Huskies in women's basketball because they did win their tournament. So congratulations to them. I did want to bring that up. And we'll find out who wins the men's tournament tonight. But let me know what you guys think, though, about the games from over the weekend. About Duke's collapse, Florida winning over Auburn. Your thoughts on the national championship game, let me know in the comments. So we are going to take our first break of the show. And then when we come back, we will talk about Jalen Brunson. We will talk about him returning and also talking about the NBA standings, where everything currently stands as we near the end of the regular season here. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit. A stupid myth, you choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about the NBA standings, as well as talking about Jalen Brunson making his return yesterday for the Knicks. The Knicks picked up the win last night against the Phoenix Suns, who were without Kevin Durant, obviously. I did forget to bring this up when talking about the college basketball games. So, in the final 10.5 minutes of the game last night, Houston scored 25 points. They went 7 of 19 from the field, 6 offensive rebounds, 1 turnover. And then comparing that to Duke, 9 points, 1 for 9 from the field, 1 offensive rebound, 5 turnovers. It's not good. That's not good. That's not good. It's just a very tough loss for the Blue Devils. And Houston had a 1% chance to win with 1:14 left, according to Sportsline's model. But they got the win. They got the win. So let's talk about the NBA, shall we? So Jalen Brunson missed some time due to the ankle sprain that he suffered, a couple weeks ago when the Knicks were playing the Lakers out in LA. Brunson rolled his ankle stepping on Austin Reeves. And you feared the worst at the time, but then you got a lot of positive updates, and, Brunson was going to be back at some point. And, he was definitely going to be back for the postseason, maybe not the regular season, but he did make his return yesterday. Didn't have a monster game, but he helped the Knicks secure their 50th win of the season, and they have now had back-to-back 50-win seasons, which has not happened in a very long time. I know Mike Breen said it on the broadcast. I forget when the last time that happened. Oh, wait. I think it's... So the Knicks improved to 50-28, giving them consecutive 50-win seasons for the first time since having 4 in a row from 91 to 92 through 94 to 95. So there you go. And Brunson last night, like I said, had 15 points. Not a great shooting night. Went 3 for 9 from the field, 1 for 4 from 3. Where he got his points was free throws. He went 8 for 10 from the free throw line. Josh Hart had 10 rebounds last night. He had 7 points. Mikal Bridges had 22 points. OG Anunoby had 32 points. Karl Anthony Towns, he had a double-double, 13 rebounds and 19 points. OG Anunoby has played really well as of late. And the important thing for the Knicks now is they're whole. And now they're going to be able to gel together for the postseason. And you hope that, being a Knicks fan, that it carries into the postseason. They could play well and maybe, they could stack up better against, the top 2 teams, the Cavs and the Celtics. Now, I've said it religiously. I think the Knicks' ceiling this year is getting to the second round. Because the Cavs and the Celtics, there's a gap there. Now, like I said, the Knicks are whole. You finally got Mitchell Robinson back, and he's coming off the bench. Brunson's now back. If everybody could stay healthy for this playoff run, and the playoffs are different, and the Knicks know what's at stake. They know, they've been hearing it, I'm sure. Oh, they can't beat the good teams. They can't beat the Cavs. They can't beat the Celtics. Now, they played the Cavs recently, and they were doing well against them in the first half, but then the Cavs obviously prevailed. So, and, the Knicks, they will be playing the Celtics on Tuesday. They finish up with the Celtics. They're in Detroit to take on the Pistons. Then they're home against the Cavs, and then their final game is against the Nets on Sunday. So, let's see what they do. These are kind of maybe, dress rehearsals for the Celtics and the Cavs if they are able to move on in the first round. But, yeah, they're basically locked in to the third seed. The Pacers are behind them. They're 3 games back, but the Pacers are probably not going to catch up to them unless the Knicks collapse. Then you got the Bucks at the 5, Pistons at the 6, and then, for the play-in games, you got the Magic, the Hawks, the Bulls, and the Heat. So that's where everything's kind of set up right now. And then you have the Cavs and the Celtics. So the Cavs are going to finish with the 1 seed. They will not get the 70 wins. Actually, have they been... they're 6-4 in their last 10 games. I mean, they have just been so impressive this year. 33-6 at home, 29-10 on the road, 11-2 against the division, which we don't really talk about divisions in the NBA, but the conference record, 39-9. So they're beating up on everybody, essentially. And then you got the Celtics, the defending champs. it's going to be interesting. But I think ultimately we're probably going to end up seeing, the Cavs and the Celtics in the conference finals unless an injury happens. But, we'll see, though. For a casual Knicks watcher like myself, obviously I would like to see them go further than they did last year, because they haven't been to the conference finals in a long time. I know we talked about, when Carmelo was with them and, they got to the second round and they got knocked out. And then last year you thought they really had a chance, but, injuries and, the Pacers are a good team. And obviously I think about, Andrew Nembhard hitting that step-back three-pointer where the Knicks could have won that game and maybe the series would have been different. But, that's kind of, I don't really see anything major changing. Maybe between the Bucks and the Pistons, maybe if the Bucks slip up a little bit, we could see the Pacers, or the Pistons pass them, and they end up being the 5. But other than that, everybody's pretty much locked in where they are right now in the Eastern Conference. Over in the Western Conference, though, it's a completely different story, right? It is jam-packed, especially when you look at, you could throw, the 3rd seed to the 8th seed. Because everybody is separated by 2 games. The Lakers right now, they're a game and a half up on Denver. Denver's a half game up on the Clippers, the Warriors, the Timberwolves, and the Grizzlies. So you could definitely see a shift in who's going to be in the play-in. Because right now, the Kings and the Mavericks, they're locked in the 9 and 10 spots. The Mavericks look like they're going to get in and be a play-in team. They've lost their last 2 games against the Clippers. Both games were not close. They actually do play the Lakers on Wednesday. So that's a game to definitely pay attention to. We'll talk about that this week because Luka making his return to Dallas for the first time since the trade. AD is going to be going up against his former team. So, obviously would have liked to have seen Kyrie play in the game, but that's not going to happen. So that's something to pay attention to. But the Mavericks, they will make it in as a play-in team. They will. Because the Suns, they have been a massive disappointment. They have now lost, I think, 6 in a row. Yes, they've lost 6 in a row. 4-6 in their last 10 games. And their final games come up against the Warriors and their next 2 games are against the Warriors and the Thunder, so I think they're going to lose those 2 games. Then they play the Spurs and the Kings. It's not going to happen. They're going to miss out. And again, what a disappointment this Suns team has been this year. And Kevin Durant's going to be gone. Who knows what happens with Devin Booker. Bradley Beal will probably still be around because of the contract. But, yeah, they have just been a massive disappointment. But it is really jam-packed in the Western Conference. And it's amazing what's happened with the Grizzlies because that team was up there. That team was the second and then the 3rd seed, and now they're all the way down to the 8. Now, again, they made the curious move of letting go of their head coach when, they're going to be a playoff team. There's not much time left in the regular season. That was, I did question that move. And now, who knows? They could be out. They might not even make it out of the play-in. No, I think they will. But, still, they could be an early round exit. So, the Western Conference playoffs, I think, are going to be really good. I feel like, you could just, some of these teams, I feel like a lot of them can make a run. Now, the Thunder obviously are the top team, but I could see them getting knocked off. We'll see. But, look at the Lakers the other night. Well, not even the other night, but last night. They beat them 126-99. Luka had 30 points last night. Austin Reeves continues to play well. He had 20. LeBron had 19. And Rui Hachimura had 11. Finney Smith had, he had 14 off the bench. They were able to get the win against the Thunder. They won 126-99. They dominated. This wasn't a close game. Now, they play again tomorrow, so we'll see what happens then. But, I think again, the one thing I worry about the Lakers is, is you know, not having a big man, but you got two top 5 players essentially with Luka and LeBron James. And they could go on a deep run with those two guys. They can. They can. They definitely can. Right now, they would go up against... Actually, yeah, they would go up against the Warriors. So the other day, the Warriors and the Lakers were the 4 and the 5. Now the Lakers are the 3, and the Warriors are the 6. But that could all change. That could all change in an instant. But it's exciting. It's an exciting time. Playoffs are around the corner, and looking forward to that. But let me know what you guys think about the current NBA standings. Also, Jalen Brunson's return. Again, very good to see him back on the court again. And playoffs are around the corner. So before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate, get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. It makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also, the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So, when we come back from our next break, we will talk about the breaking news from last night, and that is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. agreeing to a long-term contract extension with the Blue Jays after it looked like that wasn't going to happen. And we will talk about the specifics of the deal, what that means for the Blue Jays going forward, and all of that. So, make sure to stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the third part of the show, we are now going to talk about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. agreeing to a long-term deal with the Toronto Blue Jays. So like I said at the beginning of the show, I was going to talk about more torpedo bat stuff. But now I was going to talk about Rob Manfred and what he had to say on it. Now, we will get to that tomorrow. But as I'm getting ready to go to bed, I'm on Instagram, and I see that Vlad has agreed to a long-term deal. And I said, well, going to have to talk about that tomorrow. And that's what we are doing. So I did bring up the specifics. So it's a 14-year, $500 million contract pending a physical. There's no deferrals in the deal. And this will keep him in Toronto for essentially the rest of his career. Now, it didn't look like that was going to be the case because, the Blue Jays and Guerrero, they were, in constant negotiations, throughout the offseason. And then it got to a point where it was like, hey, if a deal is not done at this time, going to test free agency. So then you thought, all right, well, Vlad is not going to stay in Toronto. He's going to be elsewhere next year. But then I think he did hear some rumblings that they were still negotiating and that a deal could be done. And that's what happened. A deal was done. And you see the deal that Juan Soto got. You compare it to this deal. I mean, you look at that and you say, all right, well, Blue Jays got Vlad on a discount. Now, I think Juan Soto is a better player than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is. So obviously he deserves to get more money. But, Vladimir Guerrero, he's not 30 yet. I think he's a year older than Soto, or he's around the same age, because Soto's 26. Actually, they are around the same age. So yeah, Vlad is 26, and then, or he just turned 26, and then Juan Soto is also 26. He's going to be 27 in October. So, but yeah, I mean, Soto is the better player. But, this is a big deal for the Blue Jays because, you don't want to lose that player. You don't. The Blue Jays have been kind of a disappointment in recent years. They looked like they had a team that, was going to be, at the top of the AL for a long time. But some guys left in free agency. They had Marcus Semien. And you had Teoscar Hernandez. And again, I say this all the time. I still don't understand why they traded him. Why did they trade him? He's a good player. And, I complain about him all the time because he used to be in the AL East. And then, of course, the Yankees played him in the World Series. And, he beat them up in that. Right? But I still draft him in fantasy because I know he's good. But I don't understand why they did that. But other things also happened, too, with that team. They expected more out of Kevin Biggio. Alek Manoah was a very good pitcher for them, and then he fell off. Bo Bichette has been disappointing in recent years. Vlad also had a down year as well, but, he's going to turn it around. And so far this year, it has not hit a home run yet. Batting .256, 4 RBIs, 666. OPS. He's going to turn it around. Because last year, you look at his numbers, 30 home runs, had 103 RBIs on the season. He played in 159 games, struck out 96 times, batted .323. On base was almost 400, 396. Slugging was 544, and then his OPS was 940. Compared to the 2023 where he had a 789 OPS. The numbers were a lot better than his 2023 numbers. But here's the other thing with Vlad. He's durable. Since 2019, he played in 123 games in 2019. He played in all 60 games in the COVID season, 161 in 2021, 160 in 2022, 156 in 2023, 159 last year. Guy doesn't miss games. He plays. So that's also good. Blue Jays right now they've gotten off to a 5-5 start. They were 5-2, and then they played the Mets and got swept. The Mets had a good weekend against them. The Mets now are 6-3 on the season. But yeah, Blue Jays 5-5. Is the postseason in their future this year? I don't know. I see them as a wild card team if they do get in. I don't see them winning the division. Right now it's close, but also we just started. The Red Sox had a very good weekend. They've won 5 straight. They swept the doubleheader yesterday with the Cardinals. They scored 18 runs last night on Sunday Night Baseball. Alex Bregman looks like he's settling in well. The Red Sox had 22 hits yesterday. So, and that was the popular pick for the division. Now, I went against the grain and took the Orioles because I didn't want to take the Yankees because of the injuries. And, I wanted to go, again, like I said, go against everybody. And, that's not paying off so well because now the Orioles are in last place at the moment. But that could change. And actually, going back to the Blue Jays, they start a 3-game series with the Red Sox this week. Well, today they start. It's a 4-game set. So, that's a big series coming up early on here, and we'll see how it goes. But, I definitely didn't expect there to be a deal done during the season. I thought that, look, the Blue Jays are going to take their best shot when we get to the end of the season, we get to free agency, and they're going to try to bring Vlad back. But I think this does also show you that Vlad wanted to stay with the Blue Jays. I think it did. Because I think you could have saw one of these other big market teams try to overpay for Vlad. Like, I could definitely have seen the Mets maybe. I mean, maybe not, but, because, look, the Mets did overpay for Juan Soto. They did. And I'm not trying to, stir the pot, but it's an overpay. And, had he gone back to the Yankees, that would have been an overpay. You could say the Vlad deal was overpaid. But comparing it to the Soto trade, or the Soto signing, again, it was a discount. But then you could say it's not the same player. So, Vlad maybe could have got more money. Maybe I don't know. I'm just speculating. But, he wanted to stay with the Blue Jays, and they were able to get a deal done. Now he's locked in long term, and he's not going anywhere. But he would have been one of the top targets on the market, if not the top target. Because you have him, and then you also have Kyle Tucker, who's going to be a free agent as well, that a lot of teams are going to be looking to try to get. And that's a player that, I maybe want to see this team go after. We'll see. But, so Vlad is going to be a Blue Jay long term, and we'll see what happens with, some of the other players like Bo Bichette. Is he going to come back? I don't know. He could be gone. But he's been a disappointment. And, we'll see how this Blue Jays season unfolds. Like I said, I don't think they are going to be I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I think if they do make it, it's going to be as a wild card. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. This was something, like I said, that I didn't expect. And, now a lot of the teams are going to have to pivot because, again, a lot of teams were going to be in on Vlad in the offseason. And now all of our focus now is going to be on Kyle Tucker being the top guy when we get to free agency. But, of course, don't want to rush the season. The season did just start. Season's a week old. So, or 2 weeks old, really. Almost. So, but taking a look at the games for today. So, the Yankees-Tigers series, all games got moved up. They were originally all supposed to be at night, but because of, bad weather, because of cold weather, it's really cold in Detroit. They moved all the games to earlier in the day. And I remember goes back to, I think, 2015. The Yankees were in Detroit, and it was snowing. So we have seen some snow. I know in Colorado it was snowing for a game. But, yeah, so they got moved up. Yankees begin a 3-game set with Detroit. Cardinals begin a series with the Pirates. We actually do have news on the Dodgers of Blake Snell. He was placed on the injured list with shoulder inflammation. So already the Dodgers are dealing with injuries to their pitching staff. But guess what? They can withstand it. We talked about this. They can withstand it. So, I'm not too concerned about that for them. But, yeah, they begin a series with the Nationals. Like I said, we talked about the Blue Jays. They begin a series with the Red Sox. Mets are playing the Marlins again for the second time in their many days. The Rangers will be going up against the Cubs. Twins against the Royals. Orioles are out in Phoenix. They will be taking on the Diamondbacks. And then you got the Astros and the Mariners going up against each other. Reds against the Giants. They'll be playing each other for the second time in their many days. And then you got... Giants actually are off to a great start. They're 8-1. And then you got the Padres and the A's. A couple of former Yankees going at it. Michael King and Luis Severino. Missed both of them. Wish they were in the Yankees rotation right now. But, yeah, so that's a rundown there. But, yeah, looking at the National League West, to bring them up briefly. So the Dodgers are tied for first right now. The Giants are 8-1. Dodgers are 9-2. Padres are 8-2. Diamondbacks are 5-5, and then you got the Rockies. Unfortunately for them, that's where they're going to be the whole year. They are 2-7. Cubs right now in this early season, they're in first place in the Central. They've been playing well ever since they stopped playing the Dodgers. Phillies are in first in the NL East. You got the Rangers ahead in the AL West. Tigers are in first place in the Central. And then you got the Yankees, who are a half game up on the Red Sox. And once again yesterday, the Yankees ended up losing in extra innings. I want to look up. I need to do a dive on this. What is their record since the Ghost Runner was fully implemented? If anybody knows that, can you tell me what it is? Comment on one of the videos, because their record in extra innings is horrible. They can't win in extra innings. They can't do it. I don't get it. But whatever. It is what it is. They've been playing well. So we're going to take our next break now. When we come back, we're going to switch things over to football. We haven't talked about football yet today, but we will talk about Julio Jones announcing his retirement and, talk about his career. And that will be the fourth part of the show for today. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we are now going to talk about Julio Jones announcing his retirement after 13 seasons in the NFL. And I just realized my segment title says "Comeback After 13 Seasons." I don't know why it says that, but I can only blame myself. So Julio Jones, a long-time Atlanta Falcon, after 13 seasons, spent some time, bounced around a little bit, spent some time with the Titans, then he went to the Buccaneers, and then the Eagles actually signed him at one point. That was back in 2023. He announced it. This was on Friday. We obviously were done with our show by then. And it was on 404 Day, which was a nod to Atlanta, and retires at 36. Like I said, spent 13 seasons in the NFL from 2011 to 2023. His last game played was with the Eagles. He was drafted 6th overall to the Atlanta Falcons back in the 2011 draft. And his career stats: he has 914 receptions, 13,000 receiving yards, 16th all-time in NFL history, 66 touchdowns, was to the Pro Bowl 7 times, 2 All-Pro selections. With the Falcons, had 848 receptions, 12,896 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns, second in franchise history behind Roddy White, who has 63, 7 1,000-yard seasons from 2012 to 2019, and has 2 receiving titles. 2015 season, he had 136 catches, which was second all-time. 1,871 receiving yards, third all-time for a single season. Playoff stats: 77 catches, 992 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns in 11 games. He's a member of the NFL's 2010s All-Decade team. And with Matt Ryan, they had 65 touchdowns together. So actually, there was 1 touchdown with the Falcons that he had that was not with Matt Ryan. Might have been with Matt Schaub, I don't remember. Because Matt Ryan always played. It was very rare that Matt Ryan ever missed a game. But yeah, it's another wide receiver or another guy that we've grown up watching that has called it quits, and I would say, watching football, he was one of the best receivers of our lifetime. If you remember the 2010s, fondly, Julio Jones was definitely up there. Obviously, you have Calvin Johnson. Antonio Brown for me, I'd put at number one, before things kind of took a weird direction with him. We'll put it like that. But Julio Jones was definitely up there. Has had some big games over the years, had an impressive career. You really wanted to see him get a ring. Went to, the Bucs with Brady his final year, was hoping to get a ring. And then the Eagles, too. Unfortunately, if he was on the 2024 Eagles, he would have won a ring. But, it was a year early on that. But the Falcons, unfortunately, their best chance was that 2016 season. You had that massive lead, and he played very well in the Super Bowl. He had a couple of great catches in that game. And, the one that, he had that toe tapper on the sideline, you thought that was going to be the dagger there into the Patriots, and you thought the Falcons were going to win that, but it didn't happen. They let the Patriots back in that game, and they unfortunately lost. And they never got back there again. And Julio obviously, dealt with injuries towards the end of his career as well. And again, once he left the Falcons, one and done in the playoffs, in the years that he made it with the Bucs and then with the Eagles, of course. And the Titans, I think, did they make the playoffs in 2021? Yeah, they did. They did. They were the number one seed that year. So yeah, they were one and done in all 3 years that Julio, played for a different team. But yeah, he was a player that could take over a game. There was that one game back in 2016. Matt Ryan had 500 yards in the game, and Julio Jones had 300 yards in the game. And like I said, he took over that. He was a guy that was taking over that Super Bowl. And, like I said, they unfortunately collapsed. But he really was one of the great receivers of this generation. And he's going to get into Canton. He is. You wish he would have had a Super Bowl ring to his resume, but, it is what it is. But he was a great player. And, congratulations to him on his retirement. And, let's see what he does his post NFL career. But like I said, him, Megatron, and AB, those are probably the three best receivers of the generation of the 2010s. Who else am I missing? I'm trying to go through everybody. That has to be the top three, right? You could order it however you want. Like I said, I put Antonio Brown ahead of him and Megatron. That might be a hot take there, but I think it's because more so I also watched more Steelers games than I did Lions games because my dad's a Steelers fan, and I was more invested in the Steelers than I was with the Lions because unfortunately for Megatron, he was not on very good teams. Obviously the 2014 season, they made the playoffs, and they should have advanced. But, there was a ticky-tacky call in that game that kind of changed the momentum against the Cowboys. But, it was just, it was a lot of rough years in Detroit for Megatron. But obviously, there's so many great plays that he had. It's just, again, I say this all the time, but, just growing up and watching these guys, and you just think they're going to play forever, and they all have expiration dates. And it's going to happen to all the guys that we're watching right now. So you got to enjoy these players while we have them, and appreciate every moment that they have, because it's going to end at some point. It is, and it's sad when it does. So again, I sound like a broken record with that, but yeah. So like I said, congratulations to Julio in his retirement. Best wishes in his post NFL career. But let me know what you guys think about Julio Jones retiring. What were your favorite moments from his career? Let me know in the comments. So we will continue our football discussion. Again, we opened up with basketball. We had baseball in the middle, and now we have football at the end. We will continue our season overviews with the Denver Broncos. We will talk about the Denver Broncos. This is the second to last season overview that we will do. Tomorrow we will talk about the team that represented the AFC in the Super Bowl and lost in the Super Bowl, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs. That will be the final season overview that we cover. And then I got to figure out, hey, what are we going to do for a final segment? Because this has kind of been the staple, for a few weeks now, or more than that. And yeah, we're gonna have to figure it out after tomorrow. But yes, so when we come back from our next break, we will talk about the Broncos, one of the surprise teams in the NFL. Go over their season. What transpired. What they've done in the offseason, what they could potentially do in the draft, all of that. And then, that will pretty much wrap up the show for today. And, and like I said, the Chiefs will be the team that we cover tomorrow, which is, I think, kind of fitting, I guess, just because, they've been in the Super Bowl so many times in recent years. And, I know some people are, sick of them. So, that's, I did it for you guys. That's why they were last. We ended up doing them last. No, has nothing to do with it. But yeah, so we'll talk about the Broncos when we come back from our final break of the show. So, for one final time today, make sure to stick around. And we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast, and for the final part of the show, we are going to get into talking about the Denver Broncos. Take a look at their season and what they've done in the offseason so far, what they could potentially do in the draft. So the Broncos were a team that I just didn't think was going to be very good. Bo Nix was coming in as the starting quarterback. Kind of a, looked at as a raw prospect. Coming out of Oregon. And, I just didn't expect them to be that good. I only had them winning, I think, 5 games. I thought, some of the games on the schedule were tough. And, I just didn't think they were going to win that many games. But to their credit, they proved me wrong like, other teams did this year or last year now. Keep doing that. They did get off to an 0-2 start. So when that happened, I said, all right, well, not looking good so far. But then they kind of put everybody on notice because then they went into Tampa up against a very good offense in the Buccaneers, and they won 26-7. And then you thought, wow, okay, I didn't expect that. But we always seem to have those kind of games in the NFL where, a team comes in and just knocks off a better team at home, and you're like, how did that happen? But that showed you, though, that the Broncos were legit, because then they won that ugly game at the Meadowlands against the Jets. And honestly, you could look at that game and say that kind of like changed the course of the seasons for both teams. Because had the Broncos lost, I mean, maybe I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I think especially for the Jets, because I think if the Jets win that game, that season goes different for them. But yeah, they won that game 10-9, very ugly game. But then they beat up on the Raiders, so they were 3-2. So they were looking good, but then they lost to the Chargers at home, and they were getting shut out the entire game, and then, came back and, scored 16 points, and, then they only ended up losing by 7, but still, that Chargers pretty much were in control that whole game. They beat up on the Saints and the Panthers. However, they did go up against the Ravens, and the Ravens dominated. They won 41-10. Then they lost that game in Kansas City against the Chiefs, on that blocked field goal attempt. They should have won that game. But then they won their next 3. Bo Nix was playing really well at this point. He threw 4 touchdowns in the game against the Falcons, had over 300 yards. They beat the Raiders. He had 2 more. And then against the Browns, he had a touchdown. He had a couple of interceptions. But they won that game off of Jameis, throwing picks. They won 41-32. They went into the bye. They came out of the bye. They beat the Colts. They were up against the Chargers on Thursday night, and then the Chargers came back and won that game. And both teams at that point were 9-6. Then they lose that overtime game against the Bengals. So they needed to win, and they're in. And thankfully, the Chiefs played all their backups, and they won 38-0. And Bo Nix had 4 touchdowns in the game. And they went up against the Bills, which I thought was going to be an underrated game. And that got off to a very fast start for the Broncos. Broncos got the ball to start the game. And right away, Bo Nix hits Troy Franklin for 43 yards. And they were off and running. And you're like, oh, man, this is going to be quite a game. But then the Bills scored 31 unanswered points, and the Broncos got eliminated. But props to them, though, because not a lot of people, including myself, had them doing well. You got to give Sean Payton and that coaching staff a lot of credit. The Broncos' defense was very good once again. And Bo Nix, I mean, he put together a good season. 29 touchdowns, 12 picks, 3,700 yards passing. Cortland Sutton had a very good season, and he got a contract extension. He had over 1,000 yards. He had 8 touchdowns. Marvin Mims, he made some plays for them this year. He had 6 touchdowns. The Broncos did not run the ball well this year. Their leading rusher was Javonte Williams. He had 513 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns. That's not good. He's no longer with them. He's now with the Cowboys. Jaleel McLaughlin had 496. Bo Nix actually had 430 yards on the ground and 4 touchdowns. Ardrick Estime, he had 310 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Defensively, like I said, the Broncos, they were a good defense. Jonathan Cooper had 10.5 sacks. Zach Allen had 8.5 sacks. Nick Bonito had 13.5 sacks. They got after the quarterback. John Franklin Myers, who the Jets missed, he had 7 sacks on the season. Patrick Surtain, 4 interceptions on the year. One of them was a pick 6. That was against the Raiders, and he won Defensive Player of the Year. Broncos defense was very good. In 2024. And, looking at the specifics of their 2 units, offense and defense. So the offense ranked 19th in total yards per game, 20th in passing yards per game. And then rushing yards per game, they were still 16th. But again, the offensive line was not the offensive line. The running game, to me, was still not great. They got to improve on that. Running back could be a position that they do address in the draft. The offensive line was ranked in the top 10. So, they did a good job at, protecting Bo Nix. Broncos allowed a sack percentage of 3.7%, ranking 15th in the league. The Broncos' passing completion percentage was 66.27, ranking 11th, while their yards per pass was 6.7, ranking 24th. The Broncos had 471, or that was like their average, I guess. Actually, I don't know what these stats that I have here are. But looking at their defense, though, their defense, very good. Third in points allowed, 18.3 points per game. Seventh in yards allowed. Eighth in takeaways. And first in sacks. They had 63 sacks on the year. And this defense could be even better. Their defense allowed an average of 18.3 points per game. We just said that already. But, they got after the quarterback. They got after the quarterback, and you need that. Looking at their offseason, I was a big fan of what they've done. They signed 2 49ers players, Intelinu Ufunga, 3-year contract, and they also signed Dre Greenlaw, adding him to the linebacking core. They re-signed... Actually, no, did they re-sign? Or they signed DJ Jones, Matt Parrott, that's an offensive lineman. They signed him to a 2-year contract. They signed Josh Reynolds to a 2-year contract. And Evan Ingram. I was a big fan of the Evan Ingram signing. That's going to help out that offense. But what are the Broncos going to do in the draft? It's going to be interesting. I think offense could be what they address in this draft. First, because the defense, it was a very strong unit last year. Right now, the Broncos will be picking 20th. Looking at Tankathon's mock draft, they have Omarion Hampton, the running back out of North Carolina, going to Denver. So I could see that. I think they go offense in this draft. We'll see. Obviously they'll address some, defensive positions in the draft, but I do think, offense is going to be their first pick. And, we'll see what Bo Nix does in year 2. I think he can only get even better. He surprised me last year with how he did. But, again, that's a credit to Sean Payton. Sean Payton got his guy, and, Bo Nix has got to, take another step forward in year 2. But the Broncos are going to be a good team next year, I would imagine. They got this young team, and, it's about time the Broncos were a good team again because, the last time they made the playoffs was when they won the Super Bowl back in 2015. Second time we've mentioned the year 2015 in this show today. But, give them a lot of credit. It's only up from here. They play in a tough division, obviously, with the Chiefs. They could have swept the Chiefs last year, had that field goal not have gotten blocked. But look, if they can improve the running game, I think is where they're going to address that. They're going to address that in the draft. Maybe you see them add another receiver at some point, but you got Cortland Sutton there, Evan Ingram they brought in, Marvin Mims, he could take it an even bigger step forward. And then I guess you just continue to build out your roster, add more depth on the defense if you have to, and what have you. So, but yeah, that's my season overview on the Broncos. They finished in second place in the AFC West, and now they're hoping that they could take another step forward. Actually, no, they finished in third place. But that's where we're at. That's where we're at. So, they could be a dangerous team next year again. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the other shows as well. Make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to our videos as well. We greatly appreciate it. And so tomorrow is the final season overview that we will cover, and it's the Kansas City Chiefs. And then we're done. And then we got to figure out how we wrap up our shows now. Again, appreciate you guys tuning in. And, yeah, enjoy the national championship game tonight. That is on. I mean, it's on pretty late. I mean, obviously, I will be locked into that. We will open up the show talking about that tomorrow. But, yeah, so it's at 8:50 p.m. Eastern Time. Houston is a 1-point underdog in the game. Both teams have the same record, 35-4 on the year. And like I said, I got Florida winning a close game here. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, appreciate you guys always supporting the shows. And we'll be back again tomorrow. So as always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day. Enjoy the national championship game tonight if you watch it. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go.